Friday morning, bright and early, starting out here at home at the Akron-Canton Airport. Local airport by me. It's about 5 minutes from my house. It's easy to get in and out of. There's no waiting lines usually, especially for TSA. Like, you walk right in, walk right out, basically. As we're waiting here on the tarmac to take off from Akron-Canton, I had to make my connecting flight into Charlotte, which I did make in time. And from there on out, took off, on our way to Fort Myers, Florida, to beautiful sunshine. While waiting for Mike, spotted this beautiful white Lambo cruising through the departure line. It's cool to see some fancy cars out. And then Mike finally shows up after that, a little bit after that, to pick up me and actually pick up Ashley, his girlfriend, as well, so we can start making our way up to Orlando. Hey, there's my ride. On our way to Orlando, we had to stop at a Real Street Performance, which is cool. I've always wanted to check out this place. So we're out here at the backside of Orlando, Speed World. Just checking out the track, actually. And man, that's a pretty bad surface. Definitely worse than, if I had to guess, like, we thought the backside of Quaker was pretty bad. This is really bad. It's pretty wild. Pretty wild how, like, there's just a bunch of rocks that like stick up out of like nowhere. It's pretty bad. It's cool though. Definitely sweet. Back to miserable weather. It's snowing right now. It's like 28 degrees. Woof. What's happening, everybody? It's Tuesday now. So you just saw everything from my recap from Florida this past weekend. I'm still pretty tired. My whole body feels like I got hit by a truck. I guess that just determines how much out of shape that I really am. I really need to bust my ass and start working out and getting back into shape. But that's another story and another time. But so I had a really good weekend in Florida. Obviously, It was nice to get away for a minute. Obviously, nice to help Mike out in the situation that he had on his hands. Obviously, if you've followed along with the table and stuff like that, you've seen that Chris has been going through some health stuff lately. Thankfully, he was able to go home on Thanksgiving Day from the hospital because obviously you've seen we were live Tuesday on the table. He was actually in the hospital when he did the live feed, so it's good that he made it home. Especially for the holidays. But just keep him in your prayers. He's got a long road ahead of him, and we definitely need him around a little bit longer than this time. So, but yeah, it's cool. Orlando World Speedway is a cool place. Obviously, I went there in February when we did Sick Week with Tommy. But we were always on the front side, so I only got to make it up to the starting line, I think, like 2 or 3 times. So I never checked out the backside. And backside was definitely cool. It was definitely a challenge. It's probably one of the worst backsides, like I said, I've seen. All-wheel drive definitely has a very huge advantage there. So obviously I see why. It's in Rome with Brung, and they have their own all-wheel drive classes because them dudes were flying. I mean, absolutely flying. I believe that they had even the small tire field, covered substantially as far as times. I don't exactly know times, but I have an idea. But yeah, it's a cool track, a cool facility. The vibe was something that I haven't seen in a while. The crowd was very energetic. Every time like somebody would win, they would go crazy. And I haven't seen that kind of, I would say, like enthusiasm in a long time. You do see it at some events and stuff, especially if it's like a big race. It's between like two big hitters. You know what I mean? Something like Warren Woods or anything like that. But like just the sheer fact of how crazy people went after somebody won was different. I actually liked it. Like I think that I wish all races, kind of had those people, had the enthusiasm, to celebrate when, a crazy race happens and one lane wins over the other. I don't know. I thought it was cool. But yeah, so they end up having like a little over 160 cars between all the classes, which was awesome. I mean, that's an awesome car count nowadays for the circumstances of everything that's been happening in our sport. Obviously, Florida is, and I'm not saying this in a bad way, like Florida's kind of like behind the times because, they didn't really do that much no prep stuff down there, in the last few years. The rest of the country obviously has caught on to that and exploded. And I feel like Florida's been one of those states where like they've been like kind of like last to move along with the whole no prep movement that's been going across the country. But that's cool to them to show out. I mean that atmosphere, the car count and stuff, that reminds me of like when we first started doing events. We had that same vibe. We had that crazy car count. Like, oh my gosh, there's like 100 cars here. Sweet, like it just reminded me a lot of those days. And now like it's unfortunate that like those days are kind of over. Like that's not the way events go, sadly, anymore. But Mike did awesome with his crew that he had. Obviously, that racing channel is obviously involved as well. Javier, who runs that organization, that was actually his event, and he brings Mike in to help facilitate and run the event. He has his guys, so they basically like split it up to where like Mike covered the front half of the track, and TRC covered like the last half. So basically, the finish line guy was TRC. Everything forward was obviously me, and then Freddie, who was tire crack for Mike. So we had a really good time. Really sucked first round. We had a major malfunction of a car. The car they call Billy Goat. It's a silver Chevy Nova nitrous car from Florida. You've obviously probably seen this car dig or die a lot. Car does extremely well for being a nitrous car. He ended up blowing it up right at the finish line. It actually backfired, blew the scoop off. It actually sent a connecting rod out of the block. There was actually an end cap out down there. I mean, he blew it. He fucked it up. It was bad. It was probably one of the worst blow ups I've seen in a while. But that took about an hour and 20 minutes to clean up, which it sucks because there was so much oil down from that it was all on the front side of the track. And, you know, if you put any type of oil on rubber, like it's like walking out on an ice lake. Like you're going to slip and fall easily. So it took them a long time to get that cleaned up. Thankfully, it wasn't on the course asphalt that they have there, because if it was, we'd probably be talking about a different situation. To get something like that cleaned up is pretty much nearly impossible. But after that, things kept rolling. I think we had another car that did hurt, but thankfully the fluid level was very low compared to the first oil down. So, other than that, we kept the show moving. The best could get the cars up there. I think we ended up finishing up around 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning for 160 cars, and the downtime that we had first round and trying to get the event started, I think they did very well. I know that there's going to be some changes made next year. Well, yeah, next year for his races, the way he does things. Just to expedite time, basically. You know, the whole having a waiting list for people that drops off, like, that's cool and all, obviously, to bring more cars in, you know, to replace those cars that didn't, you know, either didn't show up or they broke. But the timeline just doesn't equal out the difference, because at the end of the day, if you're a spectator, you know, if you give a spectator, you know, a 5 to 6 hour show, that's perfect. Like, that's absolutely perfect. And they get to see everything. They even get to see the final. And, you know, a lot of people, you know, they want to come to these races and they want to see a final. They want to see what last two cars is going to, you know, make it to the end of each class, especially small tire. So, obviously it ran over. There was a lot of people that did leave by like 10, 11 o'clock. I mean, I get it. You know, they've been there since 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Like, you know, anybody'd be tired, you know, after a long day. Thankfully, like, the weather was nice. It wasn't hot. You know, it did get a little chilly at night. So, you know, not normal for what Florida weather normally is. So I'm sure a lot of people weren't used to that. And, you know, they were over the cold and this, that, and the other. But, like I said, we got done at a pretty reasonable time, and we were all pretty exhausted. I definitely was exhausted, and I've been sore ever since that day. All right, so one thing I did want to comment on, and obviously this has been a discussion the last couple of days. It was about the way that the finish line was set up. Obviously, like I said, TRC handled all the finish line duties. That was their guy. The way they had it set up, that was all their deal. They have ran this event for 3 years now. Obviously, if I would have ever thought that there was an issue, it would have already happened. You know what I mean? And they felt confident, and obviously we asked, made sure, like, hey, you guys know what you're doing, stuff like that, and they're like, yeah, everything's good, like, yeah, we're good. I'm like, okay, sweet, perfect. It's not my event, it's not my I have nothing to do with making executive decisions. So the best way I can describe it is, obviously I'm hired to be the flagger. I'm hired there to be calls. I'm hired there to help run the event. That's it. So apparently there was an issue first round of the guy at the finish line wasn't exactly on the finish line, is what I understand. Now the crazy part is I didn't know anything about this until the event was over. So that entire night, obviously I didn't leave starting line because I stayed up there. I actually stayed up there during the oil down too, just to kind of monitor the situation. But I didn't leave the starting line at any point from when we started at 4 till 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. I was never told anything that happened that was going on down track, especially first round. Had no idea anything that happened until Mike said something at the end of the night, and I said, "What are you talking about?" And he told me what happened. And he's like, "Yeah," he's like, "I kind of didn't want to bring that up," and I was like, "Oh, well, it sucks, So there was a running question that the guy who lost the race said that he actually won the race. He evidently went to Mike about this situation and asked to see the footage. And originally, in the driver's meeting, it was said that if there was a protest of any point, to come up to Freddie, who's on the starting line, who stayed there all night as well, give him the $100 to contest, and then I would review any calls made. So that particular situation was never brought up to us on the starting line. So the guy who lost never came up and gave his money to Freddie to protest the actual finish line call for me to go down and look at it. I reviewed 4 calls that night, 3 tire cracks, and I had 1 finish line call that was not protested, but the finish line guy could not make a call of who won. So the 3 tire crack calls was all protested. No calls were reversed. Everything was exactly is what it is. Finish line call, I went down and made it a pretty substantially fast call on that. Now I did notice that when I went down there to look at that call, I did look at the video, and the video wasn't ideally like how I would normally put a finish line camera set up at. So Javier, who is with TRC, who runs the event, it was actually him in the race versus another guy in the semifinals. And while he was down there, I told him, obviously, I showed him, obviously, that he lost the race, which he did see. But then I said, hey, just FYI, I said, the way that you have this set up right now, I said, is not very ideal. And I kind of gave him a scenario to why it wasn't set the way it was. And if his vehicle would have been another inch or two further up than it was, that the call wouldn't be able to be made because you wouldn't be able to see both cars. Ideally, you want to see both vehicles. So having height on your finish line camera is a huge key to not having any issues. They had it right along the wall, so pretty much it was eye level of the cars, which you can't make a call off that, because ideally two cars are going past each other and they're side by side. It's always going to favor the left lane because the left lane's the closest to the eye, and you can't see over to see the right lane. So if you have height, you'd be able to see both cars, see exactly where the front ends are when they come across the stripe. So I did explain to them that obviously I'd seen that. That was in the semifinals. So I said, hey, if you can for the rest of the rounds, Garrett was down there with Fuel by Racing. He was streaming. I said, can you stand up into the back of his truck and film the rest of these finals? So that's what he did. Came back, finished the rest of the race. So anyway, I'm going to go back to this original protest. So the racer in question protested the call at the finish line. Obviously, it was called by the finish line to me. Obviously, this, that, and the other. Mike, out of the goodness of his heart, obviously, got the finish line footage, reviewed it for the racer. Originally, in the driver's meeting as well, it was supposed to go off one camera only. Obviously, this camera was in question because obviously it was not properly on the finish line. So they ended up going off of two other videos that was down there as well. Which you shouldn't do because you have one camera and you use one camera. If you start going into other cameras to look at stuff, then you're put into a whole nother can of worms throughout the event, because then people will try to, make review calls and they'll start trying to throw other footage at you since you already looked at other cameras for another call. That's just a whole nother can of worms that you really do not want to get into. That's why anytime I'm doing anything, I'm going off one camera only, and I won't even look at somebody else's footage. I actually had a girl that was protesting that wanted to protest a cross call, is what she was protesting, that the vehicle that they raced crossed the center line. Now, there is no cross video. Tire crack camera is very hard to be able to see down track. Now, thankfully, obviously, all of us, when cars go down the track, we always turn our back immediately after they pass us, because what I'm looking for in my eyes is if somebody does cross. In that instance, the truck that it was racing did get close to the center line. It actually blew the cone over, is what happened. But it did not hit the cone, and it did not cross. And that was what I seen through my eyes. The line is pretty apparent all the way down the track. You can see it clear as day. I can see the finish line, and I did not see a cross at all. And that was a question, and they asked to review it, and I said, you can't review it. I said, I'm going off of my eyes of what I seen. And I said, that truck did not cross the line. So Mike reviewed the calls of that race before. I know I'm fucking sidetracked in like a motherfucker. I'm sorry. But anyway, so we're back to the original racer that protested a finish line call. Mike reviewed all the footage from all 3 videos and determined that he did lose. He did lose. Which he was not very happy with that, obviously. He thinks he won this, that, and the other. Really, really close race. I can see why they called Left Lane the winner. From the videos that I did see, but it's hard to do that. Like it was definitely hard to declare what I mean. I could see why they called it the way they did, but at the end of the day, you gotta do it right, and you gotta be definitely 100%. All right, so obviously he was not. He was pretty upset about that whole situation. And at the end of the day, like Mike, you said, he goes, I wish I would have never told him I would look at it. He should have just protested it like everybody else did, which he never did. He never protested it to us. He never protested it to me. Didn't protest it to Freddie. You know, he apparently he had the money in his hand, and he just never followed through with it. Which, I mean, if you listen, and I mean, I don't know if you just didn't hear in the driver's meet. I don't know. Like, we cover, like, when I go to an event or when I do my own event, like, we cover all those bases. Like, that's nothing new. Like, it's just like, same person was kind of arguing with me on the starting line because, the guy he was helping, or him, was a nitrous car and they were racing a turbo car. Well, normally a turbo car does always go in first. Normally. The guys that he did race wanted to go in second. Well, he got mad about that and mad at me. And I said, Bud, they want to go in second. I said, that is your problem that you had to figure out before you guys came up here to race. If you want to go in first or second. I said the same thing on Mike's show the other night that, you know, if I'm a crew or a racer, that I'm racing somebody in the staging lanes, that's probably something pretty important that I'm going up to ask, hey, do you mind if I come in first? Or, hey, do you mind if I come in second? Like, that's not rocket science. Like, that just helps the whole situation. You know, there's no confusion on the starting line, wasting time. Obviously, it makes for a better race if all parties involved knows what's up. Like, I don't know. Like, you would think somebody that races as much as they say they race, like, they would know that. But I don't know. Sounds like I race more than they do. I don't know. It's crazy. So other than that, that was really the only biggest issue. Obviously, Mike and them know the situation. They know what they need to do to fix the situation for their next race. Change the format of the classes. You know, and he's learning. You know, obviously, he's not been doing this for a long time. I mean, shit, I still learn stuff every day. Every time I do an event, there's always a variable that you know, you never think about. Doing this for as long as I have now, like, I kind of have the science down to where now there's really no surprise if something happens, but you never know. But other than that, it sounds like everybody had a really good time. You know, there was a lot of very good positive feedback about everything. Obviously, positive about me, which is good because, you know, I'm going into a completely different demographic of cars, you know, that I'm not used to being around, cars that I'm not very familiar with. You know, as you do this over time, you kind of get familiar with what cars do, what cars don't do, how they react versus how they don't. And I kind of keep that kind of stored in my head. I don't know, maybe I'm crazy. But I always remember that. I don't know. But yeah, so flew back Sunday night. We got lunch at Twin Peaks there, right outside the airport. and waited for my flight to come in. My flight ended up leaving like 7:30. I got back about a little after 10 o'clock Sunday night, and been thrashing away on stripper glare merchandise. We had a really good Black Friday sale that went from Wednesday to Sunday. So had a bunch of orders. Obviously had merch to go pick up yesterday. My mother actually came into town yesterday. I hadn't seen her for about a month or two. So I spent the day with her, picked up merch, started shipping stuff out, and I actually have to go here in a little bit to go get more and continue shipping out the rest of the day. So I'm going to get that, start working on that. And obviously we have the table, which will be live tonight. So got to get ready for that. And I got some fewer things I need to do. I have my interview on Thursday morning, so gotta get prepared for that. I will not be going to Florida this weekend, unfortunately. Just wasn't in the cards for everybody, and flights are expensive. So I 100% get it, but I hope Billy and Tommy do very well this weekend. Obviously, I'll see them next week at PRI. Yeah, we got PRI next week, so be nonstop coming up here. And then the Christmas tree race. So, but a lot of it's going to depend on how this job goes and when exactly, if I do get hired, like when exactly that I start. So, a lot of variables up in the air right now. So, I'm hopeful for everything this week, that everything goes exactly what I'm hoping for, and hopefully changes my life. So, appreciate all the support. Appreciate all the subscribers, comments, stuff like that. You guys have been killing it. I think I've been doing pretty well as far as getting subscribers. We're December 1st now. I think I'm up to like 740 right now. Obviously, I think the 1,000 is going to be a very tough stretch to get before the end of the year. But I'm going to try. I feel like I gained about 100 subscribers last month. And I feel like that's a lot, for not promoting my channel other than myself. I'm not relying on somebody else and begging people in their DMs like, hey, like, share my channel, like, I'm not like that. I'm not out there asking for freebies. There's a lot of people that do that. And that's not I get it that you want to grow, but like, it's kind of, I don't know. I feel like it's weird to be like begging people to like share your shit and like try to help you grow, even because they're already big. I don't know. That's just how I operate. But I'm gonna end this video. I'm editing it right now. Get this up. So thank you all for watching. Subscribe and comment and stuff. If you haven't subscribed, hit the little subscribe button. If you like this video, hit the little thumbs up button. Obviously that helps get that out to more people and it gets seen by more people along YouTube land. And hopefully we'll catch y'all in the next one.